Hello and welcome to another episode of the Digitals in a Cruel World podcast, now brought to you by The Loop. More information on that a bit later. I'm your host, Ryan Pearcy, and I'm joined by the wonderful Lara Manton from LJ and Bookkeeping. Thank you, Lara, for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Ryan. It's always lovely to join you in this new iteration as well.
Yes, and last time I saw you, we were a bit more damp, weren't we? It was a very rainy day on a golf course. So now we're in pretty much a drought. So we're covering all weathers.
British summer.
Exactly. And what kind of topics do you think you're going to be bringing to our chat today?
Well, I've got the thing that's hot on everyone's on everyone at the moment, which is the Xero price increases. Obviously, big news, sort of expected if you've been around the last couple of years, but also some releases from Xero and Briefcase.
Brilliant. Yeah, bring some controversy, Lara. I like it. We're also joined by Robbie from, a partner of Forbes Mazars. Robbie, you're becoming a bit of a regular on this now, aren't you?
Yeah, it's always awesome. It's fantastic to see you guys and actually get to catch up on everything. Amazing to be in the loop, just saying. So, yeah, great to be here and great to be able to share some ideas.
Thank you. And what are you going to be bringing for us to talk about today?
I am super excited. I've got to share a little bit around, obviously, how we've started to see the integration of Early Adopters Hub into the loop. We're also going to speak a little bit around AI agents and a little bit scary maybe, but AI agents starting to make some purchases, starting to do some investments, starting to do all sorts of different things. So we'll chat a bit about that and also some releases from FYI. So that should be fun.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm going to bring, I guess, some updates to the Xero App Store. I feel like I've not really talked about it for a while, and there's probably a reason about that, and I'll touch on that a bit later. And also some news from Gusto, who seem to be going for a little outside of their comfort zone and delving, I guess, as we all are in this crazy world at the moment, into AI. It's hard to avoid that, isn't it? So we'll talk a bit about that later. But sounds like a perfect time to just jump straight in with app news. So who's kicking off today?
Hey guys, have you heard about Free Agent, the MTD solution that will keep your practice ahead? Prepare your practice and clients to get MTD done with Free Agent's HMRC recognized MTD solution for sole trader, landlord, and CIS clients. Submit quarterly updates and file final declarations directly to HMRC. Simple digital record keeping with AI-powered technology, bulk actions, and auto submissions that speed up your admin. Manage MTD compliance for landlords at scale with clean ownership splits and property level reporting. And they're not just for freelancers and micro businesses. Free Agent scales seamlessly to spotlight what matters and streamline admin for all your clients, from startups to well-oiled machines, whether they have 20 employees or 2. Perhaps you've caught them on our latest episodes of the Digitals in a Cruel World. Free Agent are proud sponsors of the Digital Disruptors, so give them a look up when you get a chance.
I have the joy of kicking off. Yay! So, really, really exciting to see that the Loop has made the big decision for an acquisition of the early adopters. And I think why this is so cool is because we know the value of the Early Adopters Hub. We know how they're going out and exploring all of the new tech and seeing how it can actually, help us on a day-to-day basis in the work that we do. But also, more importantly, just the amount of noise in the market at the moment. Having people that support you through that process, having a whole bunch of kind of guidance and insight and oversight from people who actually are in the know and testing some of that. Obviously, Ryan, you are one of those people. So, I think there's a lot that you could probably share for people around us and what it's been like. But I will say that it gives me great comfort that this is continuing as part of the loop. And importantly, that as it continues, hopefully we continue to hear some of these awesome announcements and some of the interesting tech that is coming out, because man, there is a lot out there.
Yeah, and for anyone that loves listening to this podcast but hides from social media and has no idea what the Loop is, essentially that was formerly Digital Disruptors. We have rebranded and they're now called the Loop. And we have had, I guess, the amazing chance to bring the Early Adopters Hub into our fold. It's been something we've been in discussion with Johan on for about 6 months. Wasn't something we set out to intend to do, but just made sense. And I'm super excited because I've been involved with that group since the start. So I love this. And I've got me out. It's been pretty cool, just like lifting up the hood and seeing what actually happened in the background. And it's amazing, like the process and structure it goes through, just to try and make it as objective as possible. Because we're all, we all have opinions. We're all very opinionated, especially if you've been on this podcast. And to try and strip that all back and actually find out what is critical and how important it is, and give that really tailored feedback to early stage startups in the space, I think is really important. We've had some amazing apps that have come through, such as Cresco. They've been through their RQ, if you ever come across them. I think there's 20 odd, if more than that have gone through over the number of years. And what I would say is it massively reduced the risk of failure. So the amount of apps that come in and they get lots of money and they fail and they disappear, whether you're coming from abroad or you're trying to penetrate the UK market or you're just trying to start something, it helps guide that path. So you're not going to go and do something that is just a waste of time and money. So yeah, I'm a massive fan.
I was going to say, I know you and I were both on one where we got to the end of it and the founder basically turned around and went, I don't have a business plan going forward because I've actually realised that the problem I'm trying to solve, I'm not going to solve it in a way better than any of the apps. So I'm actually going to give all the investors their money back and close down the business. So at least they've done that at that stage, I think. And also I've been involved in ones where it's like, what is your target market? And they've realised that maybe bookkeepers aren't their target market. So I think it's really helpful to have that kind of full view of the market, different access to different sizes of firms, different people within different firms, so that you're not talking to an echo chamber. You know you're going to get questioned about your product in quite a critical way. And as you say, I think that really does help founders understand whether they have got something that is going to be commercially viable.
It also just means people that are seeing these products coming out actually they know there's credibility behind it. I think that's the other thing for me is, there's so many tools. There's just so much noise happening in the market right now. I reflect on this and I kind of see it as kind of a proof point almost in some ways. How do we start to say, okay, have you got all the things that we're going to expect when we start to engage? Have you thought about this business for the long term? Have you thought about what kind of things, companies who engage with you are going to need to consider? So of course there is the guidance, there is the oversight, there is the insight that you're going to get from professionals in the space. But the other side is when you're looking at what comes out the other side, the types of technologies, we know that they've been battle hardened, for lack of a better word.
They have, yeah. And their roadmaps have been shaped. The pricing is potentially been shaped. There's so many different conversations that have gone on depending on where that product is in that kind of evolution of their growth. That it's really rewarding. And not only have we seen, Lara, ones where they've just gone, we're going to close up, but ones where they've gone, we're going to completely pivot. Because from these conversations, we thought we were going down a route, but we've identified a massive opportunity over here that no one seems to be resolving. We want to move across into that. And so, I think that it's eye-opening for both parties, as you're saying, Robbie, both for the accountants that go through it, but also for the app vendors. And I think I'm privileged to have the opportunity to take this forward. And I know there's a huge burden on us at the Loop to make this work, considering how great a job that Johan has done. So let's hope that we don't join another future podcast and we're got our head in our hands, go, what have we done? We're gonna hopefully, fingers crossed, and we're going to put a lot of effort behind it, make this continue as the massive success it's been today. And we could talk about the Loop and the early adopter sub acquisitions all day, but let's talk about something else. So who's got something else to bring to the table?
Yeah, so this news is probably not that unexpected if you're a Xero customer, but prices are going up again in September. Simple, which is kind of the more MTD style plan, that's staying the same. Ignite and Grow, which are their small business plans, are going up £2 a month each. But then on the higher end, Comprehensive and Ultimate, so if you're looking at your multi-currency, your projects, payroll, all those kind of things, they're going up £5 a month each. And the other thing they're doing is removing the 5% discount that you got if you had multiple organisations under one billing. So they're not removing our partner discounts if you get your partner discounts, but they are. I know there was quite a lot of people that were like, they're getting rid of our partner discounts. So I was like, hang on a second. But they are going to remove the organisational discounts. No, we've seen discounts code change. They've been less available as well, but they are saying they are going to continue those kind of the new licenses coming on board, or those short-term blocks of licenses. I think, again, expected? No. Is it something that we just have to swallow nowadays that this happens every September. It seems to be with Xero, it seems to happen a little bit more frequently because they tend to do sort of at least sort of, it feels like 9 months or 6 months rather than a whole year sometimes. Okay. Features, they are building some new things. We've obviously seen auto reconciliation come in. I know, Ryan, you're going to talk about some of the things coming into the App Store, but there are some changes going on. Deposits are a new thing on invoices. There are some tweaks going on behind the scenes, probably more this year than the last couple of years. And I know that there are some plans in the future, but it is that whole, how do we just have to accept this nowadays? Or is there a point at which when Xero gets to £100 a month, people are going to be like, hang on a second, where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, the big thing I still maintain is, everybody's looking for where's the value for whatever we are paying for. I think, that's the constant question that's going to be asked. And I do think there might be a lot happening, but a lot of it is behind closed doors. And, some of those features, whilst they're super helpful, and we'd hope they'd probably been around a lot more. If you said you're going to need to pay a lot more for those extra features, I wonder if they would be looked at differently. I wonder if people knew how much they'd have to pay for those, if they would still be as interested. I'm also just intrigued to your point, Lara, around at what point do we start to see people say, well, actually, you know what, that might not be worth as much as I'm paying for it. And I mean, I've already started to hear in the market about, well, we know there's loads of competitors in the space, but even people starting to say, well, what could I do myself? How could I spin up something to try and pick things up and do things? Now, I don't think that's necessarily the way to go, but the fact that kind of conversation is happening is probably indicative as to, people are getting a bit fed up, I think, of costs just continuing to grow in the space.
Be interesting if they keep growing that ultimate plan, whether that then almost becomes a sort of slightly more mid-market plan rather than designed for small businesses. But they're going to have to do things like they've changed some of the restrictions recently around fair usage and actually started enforcing those fair usage policies and some of those document limits. So it's going to be interesting to see whether actually those top two plans, whether there is something that they're moving away from more of the smaller business, but equally, because if you've got anyone on multi-currency, they need to be at least on comprehensive. So there needs to be a balance there between the small businesses that are dealing internationally. And then if you're going to look to capture that higher market, then maybe you sort of branch off that ultimate plan into something slightly different for those bigger companies. They're obviously still keen on capturing the MTD market with keeping that simple plan at £7 a month. But it is now, we're going from £7 to sort of £65. It's a very wide range now in price for Xero packages.
Yeah, but I think I'm not that surprised by it. They're growing, they're evolving, they're becoming the market leader. They're heading towards cash status. Let's be honest. And we want the development to continue. We've been saying over the years, before this one, I'd say that pretty much every price rise, we've not had anything. We've not seen anything to justify this. And although this is, a higher than inflation price rise, again, in some areas, I think we are at least starting to see stuff. And there's a lot of hype around this current XeroCon. So I'm hoping that there's going to be some announcements where we come away and go, oh, that was good, rather than coming away, that was a lot of hot air, which has felt like some of the recent ones, and possibly why they transitioned from doing it annually to every 2 years. So I'm hopeful. That's all I can say on where Xero is at the moment. It feels like they've done a lot in the back end, and I agree with you. I think they're pushing upwards into that enterprise level. I don't think they'll get to the mid-tier finance solutions, but they'll kind of bridge that gap a bit. I'm kind of keen to see when that might come out, if ever, because I think there's been some rumblings over in the Australasia area. But yeah, I'm not as on my high horse as I have been in prior years with the Xero price increase. I feel it's been hard to justify it to clients in the past. Now I feel there's a little bit more weight behind it.
Do you think?
But maybe I'm on my own. Maybe I'm.
Do you think the one interesting thing is also though that there's the open ecosystem inside of Xero and with how that starts to play out? Because I think that's always been a big part of it, and I think some of the pricing around those integration points and that it wasn't that long ago that we suddenly started to say, okay, well, how are we paying for this? What does that look like? And I think now with people wanting to get access to use AI on, the existing tools and to start to, how can I use that data to get more insight in my business, even as a sole practitioner, just to do what I need to do on a monthly basis, maybe. But like my biggest challenge has been in that space. We need to continue to see that this evolution, because if it just stays as a static tool, then I think there's easy enough to spin things up in competition over time would be my challenge.
Agreed. Yeah, we're definitely going through that whole new AI-powered finance ledger side. And when you've got digits that are putting out pricing where you only have to pay if it's, if it's automating more than a certain amount percentage of your tasks, then, you do have to justify. So yeah, I think that they have to keep their finger on the pulses. So let's hope Xerocon is a big announcement. But rather than, I guess, talk about some depressing stuff regarding Xero, I love talking about the Xero ecosystem, the Xero App Store. And I feel not being able to do this. And I didn't really know why I'm not being able to do so the past couple of months until they released April, May, and June's Xero App Store of the month all in one go. So obviously whoever was doing this forgot to hit publish, and now they've all come out at one time. So I'll run through some of these. Firstly, we've had a system called Lemon Booking added to the App Store. This is designed for community centres, village halls and sports centres, essentially a bookings event management system and little kind of website plugin as well. And I think this is the kind of stuff I love to see, where you're solving a very niche area. I think that's what the kind of Xero App Store is really good at. You don't need something generic, you need something hyper focused. And I know that there's always been a challenge, a struggle from those in that space to find a good tool. So I'm hoping Lemon Booking is the one that people can start using. And we've got loads that have gone across the AU, like so Australia, New Zealand, US, Singapore. But I'll focus on the UK ones. There's been one called Juice, which I think is a great name, that was released in April and May, it's basically a credit limit. So ability to draw down, do repayment and get dedicated loans for up to £1 million for UK SMEs. So another one of those is in the store. We've got one that I'm probably not going to pronounce correctly because I'm terrible at this, but I'm going to go with Aleph, which is ALEPH. Would you say Aleph?
Yeah.
Well, this is a native AI financial planning and analysis platform. So it's supposed to automate reporting, consolidation, multi-entity data. And we're seeing now AI really pushing into that reporting space. We've seen it in the data capture. Obviously, ledgers we were just talking about is now going in that reporting side. How they can make this, really kind of automated when reporting is insanely subjective, I have no clue. But if you've had a look at Aleph and you think it's any good, let us know, because I'm intrigued to see how they do it. You've got a system called Sterling, which is an AI assistant, which is going to look at that speed of close. The bit I don't know, and touching on what you were saying earlier, Robbie, is whether Xero will start locking those down because they want to own that space. Because they're already, I guess, in their terms regarding the App Store, you can't use our data to train your AI models. Well, I wonder if that will start to really lock down and go, actually, in these spaces, we're just not going to let you connect because this is ours. They've done that in the past regarding finance, where they said any finance providers can't be in the Xero App Store, and then they kind of relinquished that over time. So I wonder if it will go the other way regarding these kind of period and close. You've got Bookable. Hopefully, quite a few people have heard of Bookable. It's a rental software system like scheduling equipment, accepting online bookings. It's quite a common one, so it's good they're now connected. And then going into more recent ones, a big one I wanted to do a shout out for, mainly because they went through the early adopters hub, is a system called 445. Now, if you've not come across them, essentially they are looking at helping accountancy practices identify recurring spend patterns and the ability to import purchase orders into Xero quickly. So they're like a system that went through the early adopters hub, and I guess similar to what Lara talked about, really pivoted in what they were building. So I know it's taken them a long time to get to this point of having a Xero App Store recognized app. So massive congratulations to them. And then you've got a few others like in there, Xero report building one that interacts directly into Excel, and Clarix, which is another financial planning and analysis platform. So you've got a few others in there. The last one I'm going to touch on, last two I'm going to touch on, is a system called Medfin, which is for dental groups and clinics. So once again, hyper focused in that industry. I love those little ones. And Field Ascend, which is another field management system. So for managing engineers, quotes, invoices, assets, etc. Quite a few of those in this space, I think. But it'll be interesting to see how they define their niche.
You know what's really interesting also, Ron, is that I wonder how many more apps we're going to start to see. I wonder if this is going to become like a trend where people can build at scale and build at speed, and therefore we start to see that App Store become even more focused, even more niche. But again, I do think it's just so awesome to see that ecosystem continuing to grow. I think the more we can get to that, the better. But the challenge will always be, okay, so in my specific business and where I live, what's going to be the best decisions? And as you said, as I suppose we said earlier on, there's going to be some work need to be done around what works well together as a whole suite or a stack. When they're starting to go to clients, I think that's going to be key.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think digital is more and more important as a service line in accounting firms. But I would believe that because I've been banging that drum for 5, 6, 7 years. So yeah, I hope that this is going to be the period where accounting firms are like, yes, let's do digital.
Well, good news / petrifying news, maybe in some ways, they might not have to worry as much about purchases because we're starting to see AI agents actually making purchases. So in first of a kind from some of the work from Visa, they've allowed agents to come into their environment and start to make purchases on their various different accounts. Now, loads of different opinions. I can imagine this could get quite heated. I'm a little petrified about right now, usage of agents to do this type of thing, particularly if, we spoke about Juice and how we could get extra credits and we might be able to, loan some more. Like if you are using that loan through an agent and it has decided to go into a loop, I get a little bit scared. But I do think the principle here is we're starting to see the maturity of some of the agents, right? So the big thing is if we're getting comfortable, if people are getting comfortable with agents making payments. And the other one that, I wanted to mention was also some of you might have seen around Robinhood and agents actually starting to do trading. So like, some work around AI now integration into Robinhood to do trading, which I know slightly unrelated, but if we're getting comfortable with agent making payments and agents doing trading for us, then I think this is more evidence of where this is tending towards. And I do think, again, looking at this from an accountant's perspective or the digital service line, as you said there, Ryan, it's something we're needing to guide people on more and more. How are you going to set up, the harnesses for these various different agents, how control around them, how are we going to make sure that they're well governed? Because if we're getting comfortable with payments and we're getting comfortable with trades, we're really starting to get into an interesting space, I'd say.
This does concern me slightly. I was at a Google Labs day the other day, and even Google, which was all around AI and all their products on that, and even their trainers are still saying use AI as an assistant, not a doer. Yet someone's obviously confident enough to go, yeah, here's my credit card or whatever, go make payments. And that does concern me slightly. I can see it going that way in the future. But again, the rules around it, how do you control that? We know about hallucinations. We know about all of these things. What if an AI doesn't realize that actually that's 10 times the price of something it should be? How do you train all of these things into a model that means that actually you're going to be comfortable with that? Because at the end of the day, you can't really go to the bank and go, by the way, my AI went and made a bunch of purchases because I gave it access and forgot to tell it not to do X, Y, and Z. It's not fraud, it's not virtual, it's not scamming, it's not whatever. So you've got to be very sure around what you're doing and around those rules for that AI, I think, before you do anything like that.
Well, and I think it's also, there is a point around efficiency. So yes, great. It's more efficient to do this, in a certain way. But at what point is there, it's also, the risk needs to be considered inside of it. I think that's, that balance is where it's at the moment. The balance between how I may need to consider whether I want this to be done by AI or not. And I think that decision point is going to be so key for these kind of things. Sorry, Ron, I interrupted you.
No, it's my view on this is I bet you there's some businesses out there that will give their AI access to pay their credit card, but their finance team are still manually typing things up into their bank. And what I think will be an incredible step forward is that these payment tools can kind of have AI drafting payments in which we then approve. That brings in the control. You've kind of got rid of, I guess, a lot of the which is mundane processing, right? Because essentially you're paying them based on when they should be paid or whatever you set up as your terms. So that is something AI should be able to do. You just kind of want the human just to validate and approve it. So you've not got, oh, this seems to be £1 million payment to this supplier. That seems a bit odd. You just got that check, right? But one thing I would point out is that I'm starting to see more and more discussions where AI is being referred to as a person, as an individual member of the team. And these bits of functionality, the ability for them to go and do these things is required. It needs to have that place for when we get there. So should people be using, I guess, the direct connection into Visa to make payments right now? No. But that infrastructure needs to be there for when we get to that point. So maybe a good step into a future development.
Talking of future development, Engager have released a few things that have been sat around on their roadmap. Quite a lot of it's from community requests, which, if you know about the Engager community, they're quite vocal, and the founders are really interested in listening to that. Big ones coming out at the moment are the ability to have relationships within contacts and clients, so directors, shareholders, secretaries, so that when you've got all this information about your clients, you actually know what the roles are that those people are dealing with, and therefore being able to pinpoint certain roles for, I guess, communication point of view, or just for your own knowledge. The other thing that I quite like they've brought in is in your statuses for jobs, we've now got a filed status, which is one I'm really happy with, because before it was like, sometimes you still want a job open, but you need to know that you've actually filed it. So that's one that I'm really happy with. Bits around connections, if your email drops, it will now notify you. You don't have to kind of wait till you go to send an email and then discover that the connections dropped off there. And some bits around their CRM, so their deals, you can now sort by the longest open and group those so that you can see your sales pipeline. Are still going to be doing all the things that Engager do with their webinars and their fast response times and all these kind of things. But again, a few things that have definitely, I know, for example, like the filed thing definitely came from the community. So yeah, there's a few things, not huge tweaks, but just these small little improvements in product that kind of keep them up with the game.
Yeah, and what I would say is that relationship level is something that is needed in the bigger systems, i.e. the ability to link customers, contacts, clients together so that you know, well, I'm speaking to this person, how are they connected to this business and that business, etc. So I feel that this is a development pathway upwards in this space, right? Even if it's just an enabling one for future developments going forward. And, you know, Engager's always been aimed at that kind of really micro firm level. And I think maybe they're starting to evolve and grow and move upwards so that they can take on bigger clients. Maybe that's a stepping stone for them.
I think that's the thing. They've kind of captured the solo practices, the really small practices, and maybe they're understanding that in order to keep gaining that market share, they've now realised that they have got a decent product. They've sorted out the kinks and the quirks and whatever else. They've obviously got tax and calc behind them now as well. So it's a bit more of how do we move this into less of a challenger and more of a market shareholder as something that can be used across multiple sizes of firms.
And I will say it's awesome to see the kind of constant improvement. I think that's just such a key thing. I think what I can share is we've seen something really similar from FYI. So they've also started to now release. So for those of you who don't know, FYI is, cloud-based document management and practice management platform. So, kind of widely used. I know it's been spoken about. Ryan's a big fan on a few of the previous podcasts. So if you haven't, listen out to those. But what I will say is there've been loads of adoption, and it's great to see them now starting to look at further ways to automate the process. So they've now come out with the automation import wizard, and that's basically, it was previously a one-step manual import process method, and now they're working into a kind of guided design process through that. And that allows for, again, more flexibility inside of the process. You can bring across some of the more, I guess, more complex kind of processes that you'd like to have from a workflow perspective. And ultimately, it just makes it easier for a user. I think, what is lovely to see with FYI is continued focus towards a user, continued enhancement in the product. And we've spoken about that a bit here across a number of tools. And I think key thing I'd really highlight here is this just continues to enhance where they're going and ultimately hopefully more value for their clients. But good to see these types of developments continuing, I think, from my side.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see a lot of apps, tools now use AI to really help that data migration conversion input process. That seems to be a really good utilization of AI. So if you are an app that's listening, you've not used it for that migration stuff, I'd definitely look at it. And yeah, as you say, testament, right? They're getting obviously more opportunities, more scale, and they need to make it easier to bring clients in. Makes sense to create it so you can kind of self-serve to some
I was going to say, everything that we're hearing, everybody keeps telling us everywhere that, with AI, this is speeding up development processes, speeding up the work that we can do. We're getting things out faster. We can release quicker. And what that should mean is that these types of developments, these types of enhancements should be easier for people to have. Of course, we want them to go through the right rigor, the right governance and everything else. And that's what might take time. But if the development is faster and more intuitive, then my hope is, again, that this just leads to better tools for us. Ultimately, we get some more features, some more functionality released as we go forward.
And I think that's the thing, you've kind of touched on it there, Ryan. Migration, moving something like a practice management suite is a lot of work. It's a big headache. Moving any sort of software actually within your stack is the thing that takes time, and you don't get billed for that. It's not billable hours. It's something you've got to do internally. You've got to set up all these processes, learn X, Y, Z. So I think having that AI assist on the migration point is, as long as it does it well, is actually a real time saver and a real win for firms, because if you can cut down the time that it takes and you get that app up and ready quicker, client experience, all those kind of things come into it. And it's one of those things that I know from my own personal experience, but also talking to other practices, is something that really stresses people out, and also maybe a barrier between people actually moving to something, because they're like, well, it's not quite working at the moment. That looks like it will work, but we don't want to have to spend 20, 30 hours setting it up. How do we get that? So again, opening up that pipeline potentially and removing some of those blockers. So as we're carrying on this theme of small improvements at the moment, Briefcase is next on the list. This is probably less of a small one, a bit bigger one from them. They are bringing in the ability to do document chasing alongside their capture. So in terms of paperwork requests, so you will now within Briefcase be able to send a list of transactions or a whole list from one specific bank account to clients and actually put on due dates for them to provide that. They'll receive that in email form, and then whatever they send back will automatically go into Briefcase to be matched up against either the transactions or whatever's there. You can also request bank statements from them as well. So not just doing that document request in terms of missing paperwork, as we know it from missing receipts or missing invoices, but that next level of actually missing bank statements as well. So they have been, this is obviously, again, massively requested from their community. Other OCR capture tools have had this for quite a while in various different forms. So this is the one thing. They have tried it before, but they wanted to make sure it was right and it really worked before they rolled it out. So they are now really happy with that. And they are also, I guess, with around MTD as well, and their Briefcase ledger package for small sole traders, and looking at those, having that document requests and having especially bank statements and all those kind of things. If you've got a smaller sole trader that maybe doesn't have a bank feed set up for whatever reason, or again, just checking your bank statement against the bank and doing some reconciliation work, I think this is going to be a really good one from them to kind of keep rolling out and pushing the rest of the market leaders in this space.
Do you know what's crazy though for me, like a little bit on Briefcase, is they're not even 2 years, or I think they're 2 years old. They've been around for 2 years. That's coming up. I mean, in 2 years, I look at the kind of stuff that they've kind of got through and they've released and the work that's been ongoing. And I just think to myself, this is what we want to see, And so I think to your point, Lara, it's amazing to see the MTD stuff, now this kind of document chasing. But I think if they keep up this kind of release cycle of constant things coming out, constant innovations being shared, and obviously they're new to the space, and much like you said earlier, change can be tough on some of these types of on some of the types of technologies that they are trying to play in, of course. But, when they're moving at that kind of speed and they're coming out with releases, I think it's really interesting. For me, and got hold of me a while ago and said, "Oh, we're going to have our, having a second year birthday party." And I was like, "What? How has it been 2 years?" Like, first of all, how has it been 2 years? And like, I can't believe it's happened. But also, it's been 2 years, and actually, that's a lot that they've got through in that time, which is quite a thought. So yeah, I think it's great to see more features coming out, more enhancements on the platform.
I think that's the thing. I spoke to them very, very early on, and where the product has come to now, as everything else in that space as well, it feels like there's certain players in that space that are moving quite quickly, and it's one of those that kind of apps crop up and disappear quite quickly as well. So they are really solidifying their place in the market.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you kind of look at where did AI penetrate, and their AI-powered document capture, essentially that was where they started, and they have cemented their place, whereas others have failed and not, for various reasons, not managed to make it work. We have seen someone come in, and I don't think they're going anywhere now. That they're going to be around for a long time, either as them or, acquisitions occur, but the tech as part of core or something else is definitely around. But I've got something that's, I'm going to wrap this up with something that's just a little bit odd to me. So Gusto, which is a payroll and HR, market leading payroll and HR tool over in the US, has released some new AI agents. I thought, oh, cool. AI agents in the payroll HR space. It's probably need a little bit of risk from compliance side with payroll, but there's a lot of automation that can be done there. But they've gone a bit rogue. They've developed some AI agents that have nothing to do with payroll and HR. And they've essentially gone down the how do accounting firms win clients route. So they've got a website audit agent, a prospecting agent, which analyzes your website and existing client base to define your ideal kind of client profile. So what are you trying to look for? And then find those businesses that you can go and talk to. A sales outreach agent. So once you've found them, now you've got your prospect list, go and talk to them and try and sell, I guess, what you're doing. Advisory positioning audit, benchmarking against local competitors, which we have seen recently from Shapes with Plot. And so for a UK specific one, go check out that. It's interesting to see how, and there's a leaderboard. Who doesn't like a leaderboard when you see how good your website is? And you've got an expansion pitch agent and a pricing and margin target agent. And I'm just going, none of that, not a single thing is to do with payroll and HR. Just develop some payroll and HR agents, please. That would have been the thing to do. I mean, do you think this is a bit baffling?
Having used Gusto for a client that did a whole heap of payroll in the US, yes, because there are a lot of improvements that they need to make to their own platform. There's a lot of clicking and a lot of extra work that's required. I used to have to help with a weekly payroll import, and it was quite painful. So there are a lot of things that I would think they could use agents for in their own product before they start going into almost what feels like an outbound marketing and practice management suite or whatever. It doesn't quite make sense to me at all.
You know what this sounds like, though? This is like one of those classic examples where somebody said, I need to have a project inside of Gusto that's going to help me do outbound outreach and do all of these things. There's a really good idea. I can sell it by after we've done it for ourselves. Maybe we'll do it for our clients, or the other one where it's like, oh, and I know that this other company did this outbound, engagement thing. Maybe we can do it. It just doesn't feel in the sweet spot. I don't know how they're looking to integrate that over time, but it feels like it'll be really interesting to see what the uptake is like, or whether people actually buy into this idea at all. I mean, again, though, with everything AI, right, some of it is just feels like there's noise and you have to respond. So let's go after something that doesn't really align with what we are about, which is weird. I'm with you, Ryan. I think it's just weird.
It is weird. How I look at this stuff is where you've had a prospect, like say Gusto have got, a big firm I want to win. And the firm's gone, well, we would become a client, but we need to find out a way of selling this service to prospects out there to bring in stuff. And they've gone, got it, we'll build it, gone out and built it for this client. No one else cares. And that's the kind of thing where, going back to the early adopters hub, where you can ask someone, and any accounting firm, and they'll go, I fundamentally need this. But then you ask them in a different way and they go, well, actually not. It's not maybe a deal breaker. It's kind of something else we could probably live with. And there's another reason we don't really want your software. That is what the Early Adopters Hub uncovers. And that's what makes it unique. So you're not going off and building weird agents that have nothing to do with anything you do. So Gusto, if you're listening, you should have reached out to the Early Adopters Hub because we could have told you what the hell are you doing. So yeah, interesting thing I thought to wrap up our app news on. So yeah, essentially that brings us to the end of another Digitals in the Cruel World podcast. Thank you, Lara and Robbie, for joining. I hope you both had fun.
Always.
As always.
Thank you. And if I guess you want to hear a lot more about what we're doing with The Loop, which is brand new, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Although we have talked a lot about the announcement of us acquiring the Early Adopters Hub, this is only the first of many things we are going to be doing over the coming months. One of which everyone should hopefully be up already, which is our Digital Disruptor Awards, possibly rebranded now, considering we're not Digital Disruptors anymore, but we'll be talking about that a bit later. So if you are interested in attending that and people have been reaching out to make sure they can book their hotels, please do check it out on LinkedIn. It is the night before Accountex North up in Manchester at the Impossible Bar. So please make sure you're situated up there. It'd be great to see you in person for what has been and continues to be an amazing, fun networking event for accountants and software providers in the space. So we'll let you all depart and hopefully catch you on the next episode. Thanks again for listening.